Howdy everyone. The Chinese Venus Optics company make quite a broad range of lenses, but they seem to have a particular modus operandi, which is to market spectacular macro optics. Their 90mm and 100mm 2:1 ratio macro lenses are particularly celebrated and have always tested very well in my reviews. But still, a lot of people want to own a macro lens with a wider focal length, one that'll be a little easier to shoot with handheld, with a more useful, everyday field of view. Well, for those people, today their wish is Venus Optics Command, as I present to you the Laowa 58mm f2.8 macro 2x. It's a full-frame manual focus lens for mirrorless camera systems, Sony E, Canon RF, Nikon Z and L mounts. The one I'm testing here is for Sony E mount, and its price will be $500 US. I'd like to thank Venus Optics for loaning me one of these lenses for around 3 weeks for evaluation, although as usual this is a totally independent review, and I particularly like testing out macro lenses with a 2x magnification. They get you extra close to your subject, extremely close in fact, for some fascinating, not to mention very dramatic, final images. Let's look at this lens's build quality first. Anyone who's ever used a Laowa lens will be right at home with how this one feels and handles. It's just like Laowa's excellent 90mm macro lens, except being smaller and lighter. It's made with lots of metal in the lens body throughout, although unfortunately without a weather sealing gasket on the mount, and it's finished in nicely brushed black paint, which looks beautiful. There's an aperture ring at the rear of the lens, which turns with gentle clicks at each f-stop. I do wish Laowa would space their aperture rings evenly at each f-stop though, like Samyang lenses do. The lenses would feel so much more professional. Then comes a broad, metallic manual focus ring, which turns very smoothly with good precision for manual focusing. As you can see here, the lens suffers from very strong focus breathing, zooming in a lot as you focus more closely. However, that is simply par for the course for virtually all macro lenses I've ever tested. Still, it could be an issue for macro photographers who are attempting to focus stack their images. The lens has a 67mm filter thread size, and it comes with a plastic lens hood. It fitted on only very awkwardly on this copy of the lens and was quite difficult to reverse mount. Hopefully, Laowa tweaked the size of the design on the final production version. As I mentioned, this is a totally manual lens, manual focus, manual aperture, and with no image stabilization. But if you're happy to work with that, then, well, its build quality is really quite lovely. Alright, let's take a look at image quality now. I'll start by testing on a Sony a7R III camera with its full-frame 42MP sensor. No in-camera corrections are available with this lens. At f2.8, the lens is very sharp in the middle with good contrast. The lens stays sharp across most of the field until you reach those image corners, which are unfortunately quite soft. However, stop down to f4 and they look a lot more healthy in every way. Stop down to f5.6 or f8 for gradual, further improvements. Here's f11 and f16, which seem surprisingly resistant to the softening effects of diffraction. Overall though, it's not a great performance for corner image quality here. You need to stop down to see sharpness, and those image corners never truly get razor sharp. Now, this is a 2x macro lens, so let's check out its close-up image quality. At f2.8, close-up image quality is quite sharp straight away with good contrast. Stop down to f4 and we're treated to spectacular image sharpness now. Stop down as far as f8 and just a touch of softness is beginning to emerge due to the effects of diffraction kicking in at that closer than usual minimum focus distance. Here's f11 and f16, and f22 is particularly unusable. Still, there's simply no avoiding the physical effects of diffraction on any camera lens, so this macro performance really is as good as it gets. Alright, let's take a look at distortion and vignetting now on a full frame camera. The lens projects just a little pincushion distortion here, nothing really to worry about. The further good news is that, even at f2.8, vignetting is very, very low. Stop down to f4 and any corner darkness that was there is completely gone, so that is an excellent performance for vignetting and distortion. Let's see how the lens performs against bright lights now. Flaring is a little worse than average here. It's no disaster zone, but a fair bit of flaring can be seen. Next, Bokeh. A maximum aperture of f2.8 is not especially bright for a standard prime lens, but you can still get some nicely out of focus backgrounds here. On the whole, they look really lovely and soft. My testing picked up no real issues. And finally, related to bokeh comes longitudinal chromatic aberration. On autofocus highlights at f2.8, we see just a little colour fringing here, but it's less than average for a macro lens. Stop down to f4, and those false colours are quickly gone. Overall, the Laowa 58mm f2.8 2x macro lens isn't quite their best offering so far. The party's kinda spoiled by those soft image corners at the brightest apertures, but apart from that, it's still a characteristically strong product from them, in that, in every other category, it performs great, well, except for flaring. Its price of $500 is on the high side of reasonable, but still reasonable. I do think that launching a lens like this is a risky move by Laowa though, as it has no autofocus, which is something people are looking for in a standard lens that might see more use in everyday photography. You must bear that in mind before purchasing this thing. But for those of you who do have that level of patience, admittedly myself included, and who don't need the sharpest possible corner image quality, this lens still comes recommended. So, what you doing? Are you going to move on and watch another YouTube video that's algorithmed its way into your life? Before you do, take a look in the description and check out my Patreon page. If you find these reviews helpful, then that's a great way to support this channel. Plus, I put all kinds of extra bonus content on there, especially for supporters. Ciao everyone.